The front door was wide open. It started like any other Monday. My dad's alarm went off at exactly 5:45 a.m., the same grating beeping it had made every day since I was a kid. It echoed faintly through the thin walls of our house, just enough to stir me from sleep. I rolled over, pulled the blanket tighter, and tried to fall back asleep before my alarm went off at 6. But I heard something unusual that morning. Not loud, not sharp, just air. Cold air, moving, like the house was breathing. Then I heard my dad's footsteps down the hallway, followed by a pause. Then a muffled voice. What the hell? That was enough to make me sit up. Dad never cursed like that unless something was seriously wrong. I opened my door and peeked out. He was standing in the entryway, wearing his pajama bottoms and a worn-out hoodie, just staring at the front door. It was wide open, and not like it had swung open a crack. No, it was fully unlatched, swung all the way back so it nearly touched the wall. Cold morning air blew in through the screen door, which was still closed. I remember just standing there, my pulse picking up. My sister came out of her room a second later, squinting at the hallway light. My dad turned and looked at us. Did anyone open this? We both shook our heads. My mom came out next, rubbing her arms. Dad stepped outside for a second, barefoot, and scanned the porch. No signs of forced entry, no footprints on the steps, just a few dead leaves blowing in lazy circles. He came back in, shut the door, and locked it. That should have been it. Just a weird fluke. Maybe one of us forgot to shut it all the way last night. That's what we tried to convince ourselves. But there were two things wrong with that theory. First, my dad was obsessive about locking up at night. He'd do a full sweep of every door and window before going to bed. He'd even jiggle the doorknob 3 times to check it was locked, every single night. Second, we had a Ring camera right above the front door. Naturally, we all huddled around his phone in the kitchen after he pulled up the app. He scrolled through the timeline, eyes narrowing. Nothing, he muttered. No motion alerts at all since 10:42 p.m. He pulled up the live feed. It was working. The feed looked fine, but when he rewound to 5:45 a.m., the time the door was clearly already open, there was no footage. Just a gray screen. Then, a jump cut straight to 5:46 a.m. when he walked out onto the porch. No motion, no alerts, and no recording for the exact time the door opened, he said. That's not supposed to happen. Mom called the Ring support line later that day. They couldn't explain the gap in footage. The representative blamed local interference or connection instability. But we all knew that was BS. That night, we double-checked everything. Doors, locked. Windows, locked. Ring camera, tested and confirmed. We even put a chair under the doorknob like we were in some old horror movie. I wish that had been the end of it. Tuesday. We all slept uneasily. I dreamed about a shadow standing at the edge of my bed, breathing, watching. I woke up sweating, but the door was shut. Everything looked fine. That is, until I noticed something weird on the carpet in the hallway, right in front of the entryway, near the door. Bare footprints. Not shoes, not socks. Bare feet. Slightly damp, like someone had stepped inside after walking on wet pavement. Only problem? The front step was dry. It hadn't rained in over a week. Dad bent down, touched the prints, then sniffed his fingers. Smells like mildew. We didn't even know what to say. He ended up placing baking soda all over the carpet that night, hoping to catch more prints if it happened again. He also added a second camera inside, pointed straight at the door. That night, my sister slept in my room. She said she felt safer that way. But around 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of something sliding softly on the carpet. I held my breath, didn't move. It was slow, almost like fingers brushing fabric. Then, silence. The next morning, we checked the footage. The outside camera worked perfectly. The inside camera, same issue, static. It went fuzzy for exactly 3 minutes. When the feed returned, the baking soda had been disturbed, like someone had stepped into the pile with both feet, then walked down the hall toward my parents' room. But there was no one there. Wednesday, we didn't sleep that night. We stayed up, all 4 of us in the living room with the lights on. At one point, we heard the doorknob jiggle. Once, just a single rattle. But when Dad jumped up and flung the door open, there was nothing. No wind, no animal, no one outside. We even checked the yard. Empty. But the Ring camera didn't record the jiggle. It was like whatever was doing this knew exactly how to avoid being seen. That's when we stopped calling it someone. My sister found something on her pillow, a single yellowed tooth. Old, human, definitely not hers. We took it to the police, but they just said it was probably a prank. They didn't take it seriously. No one ever does until it's too late. We went to a hotel that night. My dad booked a room for the weekend. We didn't talk much, we barely slept. But that night, around 4 a.m., I had a dream, or maybe it was something else. I saw our front door, not in the hotel, our door. It was open again. And standing in the doorway was something tall, gray, and hunched. It didn't move like a person. Its limbs were wrong, like it had too many joints. It just stood there, staring in. Then it stepped inside and closed the door behind it. Friday, we went back home. The door was shut, locked. But something was different. The inside camera, the one pointed at the door, was turned around. It was now facing the living room, as if someone wanted to watch us instead. We didn't stay. We left that day and never went back. My parents sold the house within a month, cheap too. Some young couple bought it without asking too many questions. I sometimes wonder if they're still there, if they're seeing the same things, if they ever found the second tooth or the footprints leading upstairs, or woke up one morning confused as their front door creaked slowly open, not from the outside, but from the inside. The front door was wide open, part 2. We never spoke about the house again. My parents didn't want to scare my sister, and honestly, I think they just wanted to pretend it had never happened. They chalked it up to stress, faulty wiring, a prank they couldn't explain. But I never forgot. Not the wet footprints, not the static, not the dream of the door slowly closing behind something that didn't belong. A month later. It was mid-October when I got the email. Subject line, ring alert, motion detected. I hadn't even realized I was still connected to the old camera system. I clicked it open, confused, and the thumbnail made my blood freeze. It was the inside camera. It was still active, and it showed the living room. But something was wrong. There was a figure in the shot, barely visible in the dark, just standing in the corner of the living room, facing the wall, motionless, no lights, just the dull glow of the camera's night vision, casting everything in pale green hues. I clicked play. The figure didn't move, not for a full minute. Then, without warning, it turned toward the camera, but there was no face, just a soft blur where the head should be, like someone had smeared the image with wet fingers. Then the feed cut to black. I stared at the screen for a long time. Finally, I clicked live view. It loaded. Black screen. Dead signal. I removed myself from the account that night, but the emails didn't stop.
Chef.
2 weeks later, I got another one. Motion detected front door. No thumbnail this time, just a timestamp. The same time I'd heard the sliding sound on the carpet weeks before. I deleted the email. But they kept coming, every week, always at 12 a.m., until I finally blocked the address. But then the letters started showing up. Yes, physical letters. Mailed to my new apartment. No return address, no stamps. Just my name, handwritten in shaky, almost childlike handwriting. The first envelope was empty. The second had a single scrap of paper inside. It read, "You forgot to shut the door."
Last night.
It's been quiet for months. I moved again, got a new job, tried to rebuild my life. But last night, I woke up gasping for breath. And I swear, I heard my old doorbell. Not the buzzer from this apartment, the one from the house. The soft chime, slightly out of tune. 2 short notes. Ding dong. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. There's no way I imagined it. It was exactly the same. I hadn't heard it in a year, but it was burned into my memory like a scar. I got up, checked the peephole. No one outside, just silence. But when I turned around to go back to bed, I saw something in the corner of my room. At first, it looked like a shadow, but it didn't match anything. No lamp, no furniture, just a tall, narrow silhouette against the wall. Long arms, bent posture, head tilted sideways, and something in its hand. A key. Today, I didn't go to work. I didn't leave my bed until noon. There's no sign of anything now. No letters, no sounds. But I know this isn't over. I don't think it ever left the house. I think it followed the door. Wherever it opens next, it steps through like a rule, like a ritual. And now it has my key. I've started locking my bedroom door at night, which makes no sense because I live alone. There's only one way in, or at least there was. But tonight I noticed something. A draft. Cold air seeping in through the walls. I got up, walked into the hallway, and there it was, the door to my coat closet. Wide open. And on the floor, just inside, a single wet footprint. The front door was wide open. Part 3. The closet. I didn't go near the closet. Not that night. Not even to shut it. Something about the footprint made it worse than the open door. It meant that whatever this was, whatever had followed us from the house, had weight. It could touch. It could enter. And it didn't care if I knew anymore. I stayed in my locked bedroom for the rest of the night. I didn't sleep. Every time I blinked, I imagined it standing there in the hallway, half in shadow, the tip of a key dragging across the wall. Not forcing its way in, just waiting for the moment I opened the door again. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed, no caller ID. I didn't answer. It buzzed again, this time a voicemail. I waited, stared at the screen, finally opened it. No words, just the soft creak of a hinge. And one thing more, a breath. Deep, dry. Inhale, exhale, like lungs that hadn't been used in years. When the sun came up, I finally worked up the nerve to check it. I grabbed a hammer from the drawer. My hands were shaking. The closet door was still open. Inside, nothing. Just my coats, an old suitcase, the vacuum. But on the inside wall, just behind the coats, someone had carved something. I would have noticed. The carving was uneven, as if scratched in with a nail or bone. The letters were blocky, childlike. It read, "Doors stay open longer when you don't look." I stood there for a long time. I didn't know if it was a warning, or a threat, or maybe both. Later that afternoon, I noticed something worse. The closet door didn't close anymore. No matter how hard I pushed it, it would swing shut and then slowly creak open again, like it was breathing, just like the front door had done. I tried everything, WD-40, a wooden wedge, even duct tape, but within minutes I'd hear the same sound, and the door would be open again. At some point, I realized I wasn't just hearing it open, I was hearing it open from the inside. I didn't go to work again. I didn't leave the apartment. Around 11 p.m., I pulled an old box out of my closet and found something I hadn't seen in years, an old spiral notebook, one I used to write in when I was a kid. I flipped through the pages without thinking, mostly to distract myself. Then I stopped, because on the last page, scrawled in black crayon like a kid in a trance, was something I don't remember writing. The door is a mouth. It remembers who fed it. Below that, a crude drawing, stick figures, a house with no windows, and something tall standing at the door. Its arms were long and bending backward. Its head was sideways, no face. And next to it, me, drawn smaller with the word me under it. Then I noticed what I was holding. Not a toy, not a book, but a key. The call. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I called my dad. It had been months since we really talked about the house. I tried to act casual, but the second I mentioned the door, he got quiet. Dead quiet. I asked him if he'd ever seen anything. Really seen anything. Back then. More silence. Then, finally, he said, "You were sleepwalking. Do you remember that?" I didn't. Not at all. He continued, "Used to happen almost every night. You'd walk down the hall, go to the front door, and just stand there. Not open it. Just stand. Like waiting. Sometimes you'd reach for the handle. Sometimes you'd whisper." "Whisper what?" I asked. More silence. Then, "You said you were waiting for the man with the backwards arms, that he only comes through if you invite him." He paused. I didn't breathe. "And you said you already gave him a key." At 3:12 a.m., I set up my own camera, pointed it at the closet, night vision on. I didn't think I'd sleep, but sometime around 2:30, I must have dozed off. I woke up gasping, not because of a noise, because I was cold. Freezing cold. I checked the thermostat, 72, but the air felt wrong. Not just cold, wet. I looked at my phone, 3:12 a.m. I grabbed it, opened the camera feed, the closet door was open, and there was someone in the frame, just the edge of a figure, standing barely inside the closet, pressed into the coats, motionless. I sat frozen, watching the seconds tick by. Then it started to step out, one long, crooked leg at a time, and just before its face would have come into view, the camera cut to black. Now, I haven't left the apartment. Every time I close my eyes, I see a key turning in a lock, and I'm starting to remember things. Not just dreams, but a place. A room with no windows, just doors. lined up like teeth, all of them open, just a crack and something behind each one, waiting to be let in. I don't think this thing follows people. I think it follows doors. And I think I brought one with me, a door no one else can see, one that only opens at 3:12. And tonight, I heard it again. Not the closet, not the front door, but the one behind the mirror. Creak.